challenges we have had to overcome in 2020.
Find your own voice. The world has become united by the unseen, knowing there are no guarantees for tomorrow. Lead from within. Find your own voice. Let the way
The time has come to break away from the pain, distraction, experience the unthinkable.
The time has come for you to break away from the pain and experience the unthinkable. Welcome to Ngozi Talk Shows. Over to you, Carol Ann. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, good afternoon from London, UK. Wherever you are in the world, maybe it's good morning, good evening. Yes, I'm Carol Ann, and as the writing facilitator, what I do is I assist women in becoming more productive with their writing by connecting them with their deeper innate ability to write. But more importantly, they experience free-flowing writing. They experience an unlocking of the writer within, an unmuting of their story and getting their book written, getting their story written, because you cannot publish what isn't written. And all of this has come about through my own journey of unlocking the writer within. So I'm Carol Ann, the writing facilitator, unlocking the writer within.
Thank you so much, Carol Ann. Over to you, John. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Nomsa. Thank you. So my name's John Kenny, and I'm from John Kenny Coaching, and I'm the relationship guy. And I coach successful singles who struggle with successful intimate relationships. The same as Carol Ann, I kind of lived the experience of unsuccessful, toxic and unhealthy relationships throughout my life. And when I went into the therapy field, originally as a counsellor, worked on a lot of my own stuff. And then as a coach, I was able to kind of turn my life around by understanding my own relational patterns, my own relational beliefs, my sort of attachment styles, and how they impacted on my life as an adult. And now I help people to understand that within themselves, why they attract certain types of relationships into their life and how they can have quality relationships for themselves moving forward.
Thanks, John. Thank you so much. So today we're talking about relationships. How relationship can impact on your ability to live a successful life. So that was your topic, John. You chose this topic. So could you please explain this topic to our audience?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Namsa. So relationships are the most important influence on the quality of life that you live. There was a study carried out by Yale University, which was a 75-year study into what constitutes a quality, living a quality life. And they concluded that the biggest influence to the life that you live is the quality of your relationships. Not only is it the relationships that you have around you, but it's actually that all comes from the relationship that you have with yourself. So the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important relationship you're ever going to have, because that will dictate every other relationship that comes in and goes out of your life and the quality of those. So when we're looking at being able to be a success in life, the quality of your relationships and the people who you have around you, and also how you see yourself, has a huge impact and the most important factor when it determines the success you're able to achieve.
I agree with John. I think basically in life they always say if you can't get along with you you cannot get along with anybody else. So you have to get along with yourself first. So it's very, very important to actually work on yourself first so you can have other relationships. And if your relationships with your family, with your spouse is not in the right place either, that can affect your life as well. So over to you, Carol Ann. What do you think about this topic?
Yeah, it's quite an important one, because actually people don't realize the impact that it can have on your life. I certainly didn't. And like John, it wasn't until I started going on this personal development route and really started seeing things from a different perspective that I realized that my part in how relationships fell down, it wasn't just about the other person, it was about how I'd been or how I'd planned things. I mean, I remember actually once my marriage broke down, and quite a while afterwards, I then realized that actually all I had put out there was I wanted to have somebody to have children with. I never defined the relationship, how it would be. And I did. I found someone and I had got two great children. But beyond that, there was nothing defined. And it did break down. Okay, it was after many years, but and I realized that actually I wasn't true to myself. I didn't know myself. And very often my ex-husband used to ask me questions, well, how you feel? And I go, I don't know. I didn't know my own feelings. I didn't seem to know me at all. So if I didn't know me, how could I expect him to know me? You know, and I think, well, he's not doing what I want him to. Well, how can he if I'm not telling him? Because I didn't know. So it's all about the relationship you have with yourself. And that is the most important one, to really get to know who you are, what you're feeling, and be able to express that, and to know what your boundaries are and what you're willing to put up with and what you're not willing to put up with. Because again, you know, there were things, and I think back, that I put up with, I didn't need to put up with, you know, but that was who I was at that time. So yeah, it's quite an important topic. And it also, as you say, because I didn't fully know me, it impacted my role as head of department when I stepped up into that role. Because it just brought up all my childhood insecurities, you know, and all of a sudden I was finding out things about myself and about people that I'd worked with on an equal footing. It just changed completely. So again, I really had to find and explore myself. And I've learned a lot from that as well, because again, things broke down because I didn't know myself, because all the childhood insecurities that I hadn't dealt with, they then ruled the roost. They ruled the show. And yeah, that was fun and games, I can tell you.
I like Caroline, when you say you didn't basically have a clue. For me, when I was in my first relationship, you know, first I thought relationship is about getting married. I was all, because you know, when you hear your parents, they say you go to school, find a good man, and I thought, okay, I found this good man. It was like, you have to look after me. I was a daddy's girl, so I expected the man to put me first. Why are you shouting at me? No, and my father never shouted at me. The list goes on, but I didn't have a clue until I went into psychology. And I remember when I actually I did Paul McKenna's programs basically first when I was going through divorce, and then I was shocked with how my mind was, and I was like, this is awful. this man has been putting up with me with this mind for a very long time. I wasn't bad. I wasn't a bad person, but it's how my mindset was. And that's when I decided I'm not going to blame him with our relationship. I'm just going to focus on how I can actually grow myself and change for better. And actually, so when I enter another relationship, I don't take myself, the old Nomsa, with myself. So I actually relate with you, Carol Ann. And if anyone out there, if you can admit that you have no clue when it comes to relationship, just get a coaching, because if you have not be coached when it comes to relationship, or you have not gone and read any books, then you're missing out a lot. What do you think, John?
Yeah, you're missing out on an awful lot. You're missing out on the kind of life that you could actually live, and the relationships you could actually experience if you don't understand where all your stuff is coming from. So like you said, Nomsa, you've had to learn why your relationship was like it was, the way that it was, but also why you were like the way that you were within that relationship. And it's about understanding yourself and how you function in your own self that will give you the insights you need to find the types of relationships that you want. Those successes that you're looking for need to come from your choices. And if you're choosing to live out the same types of relational patterns that you learned as a kid, or if you're holding on to specific relational beliefs that you built up throughout time, then you're going to keep repeating those types of relationships over and over again, and you're never going to feel the happiness and the fulfillment that you could do from a relationship until they're explored. And like you said, a coach can help you to kind of really dig down deep into those spaces. My coach, myself, when I separated from my wife recently, because when I met my wife, I was still in my old style of relationship. So I was still repeating similar patterns, the ones I'd always repeated, where it would trigger my kind of need to be loved. So as I grew up, I saw relationships not as a place to have children, but as a place to experience the love and affection I didn't get as a child. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, what I then had a tendency to choose were people that were a little bit obsessive with love. So they would be all over me for a certain amount of time, but that wasn't sustainable because it was an unrealistic thing. And then when they started to back off because they couldn't keep this obsessive kind of love going for a while, I would then feel like they didn't love me anymore. So then I would back off, and then they would become a bit more obsessive because they then wanted to try and get me back. And then we'd kind of go round and round in this story of them chasing and me backing off, and eventually it would all just explode, and there was a lot of volatility and toxicity. And it was only when I realized that was my part, what I was playing in that. So my coach said to me when I separated, the first thing she said was, what was your role in the separation? What was your role in why this relationship didn't work? And I had to, quite openly, I knew what my role was, and I said, yes, this is what I did, and that's what led to some of the problems. But it was the incompatibility of us being together in the first place that led to us separating, because we were both carrying relational ideas and relational patterns that we were repeating over and over again, and we brought those back into the relationship. So therefore, it was never going to be a success. And it impacts in all the areas of your life. So if you're having a relationship with somebody that is causing you problems, if you're not happy or fulfilled in that space, then that's going to bleed out into all the other areas of your life. You may think, I need to get away from my relationship, so I'm going to focus on my work, or I'm going to focus on something else. But because that relationship is not in a good place, it's always going to be playing around in your subconscious. It's always going to be somewhere in your thought process, and it's going to impact on your emotions. So it's going to damage your ability to be successful in all areas that you are living. in your life at the moment.
That is so true, John. If you are in a relationship with someone and you're not compatible, sometimes we do realize that actually I'm not compatible with this person, or sometimes it's our needs as well. Everything. I know you are a coach as well. You know that everything goes back to childhood. Sometimes people, they are compatible, but because their needs were not fulfilled when you were a child, so you still have to go back, and sometimes you're gonna want that person to fulfill your needs. But for me, it was something that I had to go back when I was in my childhood. I realized that with my parents, I was very, very close to my parents, and I didn't witness my parents fighting. So when I'm in a relationship now, I'm fighting with my ex. I couldn't understand it. I was like, what the hell is this? People don't fight in relationships. So I couldn't understand that people are different. Relationship is still, honestly, I would just get really, really agitated that I'm not used to this, because I've never seen my parents fighting. So it was tough until I went to a coach, and he basically started coaching me. And then I realized that actually people are different. We are all different. We all respond in different ways. In that way, when my ex was arguing with me, because he turned around and said, "Nomsa, you are not normal," because I was refusing to fight. And he was like, "You are not normal." I was like, "What do you mean I'm not normal?" And he was like, "You don't take life too serious." Because I come from Africa. In Africa, when we don't have money, it doesn't matter. We still have to have hope. We have faith that everything that they are teaching you guys in psychology, that's what they are raising us. Our parents say, if you don't have money that moment, it doesn't mean your life is going to be the same. It's going to stay the same. You have to have hope. You have to know that relationships are more important, because if you destroy relationship now and then tomorrow you get up in the morning, you have the money, and then you have destroyed your relationship for no reason. So for me, it was holding on to hope. Whenever I have problems, I hold on to hope. You find me praying and saying, "God," and my ex will not understand why I'm not getting angry, why I'm not getting under the pillars. And it was after when he started to say, when we split up, that's when he realized, it was like, actually, you are actually bonkers. You honestly, he confessed that you were actually bonkers. And I was like, I'm not. It's just there's no point for me to get angry. I think that when I started getting coaching was when I realized it was my parents. My parents were holding on to each other whenever they were going through something. Money was never an issue. And then I had my step parents. My stepdad was wealthy, but to him as well, family was number one to him and with me. So I was raised by bonkers parents, and then I became bonkers.
It also sounds like maybe your ex had issues of his own, because if he expected you to argue and he expected you to lose your temper, that would say something about where he comes from as well. Because if he thought you were strange because you wouldn't argue, there's something in that as well, isn't there? That he must have some idea about what he thinks about relationships, and that it's normal to argue, when actually you don't really need to do that either. It's about having a balance and a conversation. You don't necessarily have to argue if you disagree on something. You don't have to argue if there's a problem.
Yeah.
It's about you sitting down and having adult conversations. So it's interesting that you were one end of the spectrum where you wouldn't lose your temper and you wouldn't argue, engage in that kind of situation. But he was expecting you to, and actually sounds like he actually really needed you to, so that he could get what he needed from that environment. And that's a really interesting thing to just sort of think about as well. That actually what he's saying isn't normal, is your normal, and what you're saying for him was his normal. And that's what I'm talking about when we come to sort of relational patterns and relational beliefs. It's the ideas that we're carrying from our childhood about what relationships should be like. And it's interesting that you said that the way that you grew up was to kind of mirror what your parents were doing. And I think that's a lot that we all do. So I mirrored what my parents were doing, but in a completely different way. So it was normal to argue. It was normal to have some kind of volatility. So therefore, I would be looking for relationships that reflected that. And if there was no chaos and there wasn't any toxicity, I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't know what it was like to have something that was calm. So I'd have been the same as maybe your ex with you. I would be looking for chaos. I would be looking for something that would be triggering. And if I was trying to raise a point with you or look for a reaction in you which wasn't coming, I wouldn't have known how to deal with that because it wouldn't have been my normal. So it's a really interesting insight that we all have our own sort of reflections on relationships, and we all have our own ideas about what they're supposed to look like. But actually, a relationship can look like the way you want it to look rather than what you think it has to.
Yes. What do you think, Carol Ann?
So, listen to what you're saying there, because actually, I was thinking about my aunt and uncle, who were always fighting. They were always, and to me, they were saying nasty things to each other. And when I used to stay with them, I used to feel really uncomfortable because that's not how my parents were. They never spoke a cross word to each other. If they had a disagreement, they would do it
Private.
earshot of us. But we never really heard a cross word between them. And so, with my aunt and uncle, there was all this, these cross words and calling them names and things. And I used to get, I felt really uncomfortable with it. But it wasn't until one day, I'll never forget, I remember they had a walk-in larder. And I remember my aunt going in to get something. And my uncle went in after her, and he gave her this big hug. And I just felt love in that moment. And I just suddenly got, they love each other, and this is their way of being together.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I was able to just let it go and think, okay, there's nothing wrong here. This is how they are. But just that moment of that little tenderness, that little, sharing of love really helped me to see this isn't, there's nothing wrong here. But what is, I think, interesting is that we don't, and I certainly didn't, I wouldn't confront anything. And actually, I was just reading up last night that actually conflict is actually a healthy thing to have. But it's actually how you deal with it. It's not about arguing and shouting and, getting your own way. It's about being able to stand up for what you believe in and say to the other person, well, I don't think that, I don't think the same as you, without making them wrong, without saying, no, you're wrong. It's about saying, well, I don't agree. And being able to then have a conversation, as John was saying, it's about having a conversation, but being able to stand up for what you believe in, but also to be able to respect the other person's beliefs and viewpoints, and just have that conflict, but then come to a point of agree to disagree, or okay to change your point of view. There's nothing wrong in that either, because in my world now, there is no right or wrong. There is what works and what doesn't work. Doesn't work. And there is no blame. And I find that I can now actually confront somebody and say, look, this doesn't work for me. And actually not say that you're wrong, but just say, this doesn't work for me because this is how I'm feeling from what you are saying. Because I now know what I'm feeling, but I'm not saying to somebody, you're making me feel like this, which then blows everything up out of proportion and creates that tension, separation, and argument. I'm just saying, this is how it's making me feel. And therefore, I can then work with that. They can work with that. And the whole conversation just goes in a different way. And I really wish I'd known how to be like this then, because I wasn't as quick thinking then either. And my ex-husband was very quick thinking. And I always felt like he was able to run rings around me, and I couldn't think quick enough, and I was very much knowing what I sort of felt things, but couldn't express what I wanted to say, or form my thoughts, or come up with another argument then, you know? And so, yeah, that was most uncomfortable. But what I've realized is on my journey is that I discovered I was actually a forcip delivery with my birth, which I realized actually compromised my language centers and my ability to find words and to express myself. That was quite a revelation for me, and I've done a lot of work around that. And the more I've worked with that and opening up language centers, the easier words now come. I'm not struggling to find them. Because at one time I used to say, oh, words go, they come in and then they just go into this void, never to be seen again. And that's how it felt and it seemed to me. Since doing my training and as I say, working, connecting those language centers, I've never said that again since. Words are there and they'll come when they come, but I now know what I'm feeling. I can now express that. I'm quite comfortable, and I'm comfortable to sort of take a bit of time and say, look, hang on, this doesn't work for me right now. So, yeah, it is interesting. It is accepting that conflict is actually healthy, but done in a way that works, rather than creating this argument and tension. But as you say, sometimes it's how people are. It's their way of being. And there can be love still there,
For me, Carol Ann, it was like, when I met my ex, he was he's a scientist. Basically, he was working his own business, everything is working well, but he decided to go and start his own business on his own instead of working under contract for the university. He was traveling all over the world with the universities. But then things didn't work. Sometimes when you start your own business, you're gonna have to cut down because the money is not coming in the way it's coming in. Here is me, I'm an African woman. I love shopping, but when the money is there, it's fine with me. When it's not there, I don't really care. I can get on without going shopping. So here is him he's actually destroying his health by feeling that he cannot provide like he used to. So I'm thinking, but you are providing. I can go, I'm living. Honestly, we were living in a house where people would stop just looking at the house. That's how beautiful the house was. I go in the fridge, okay, the money is not coming in as the way it was coming in, but I can go to the fridge and open the fridge. There is food there. I can actually go food shopping and choose the food that I want. So I couldn't understand why he was feeling that he's not providing for us as he used to. So I was like, I got confused. I was like, I'm getting confused with this English culture. What does it mean when a man has to provide? But for me, when a man is providing, is able to pay the bills are being paid, because we didn't have problems paying the bills. We didn't have problems choosing the food or going visiting on holiday the way we wanted. But it is just that lifestyle had changed. So for me, I couldn't understand it. I was like, what is all this about? That I can't provide for you the way I was like. And he was like, you are not normal. I was like, yes, I am. It's the life that you guys expect that is not normal. Sometimes you can live extravagant life, but you have to be aware that that life, it can change just like that. It's how you respond to it. So I was like, I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered. I've got clothes in my wardrobe. I can wear clothes anytime I want. And at the time I was playing football, I was earning money, I was working, earning money. I couldn't understand that part. Please, Johnny, can you explain why men feel that way? Please, you are a man.
Yes, I think you hit it. The word you used there was expectation, didn't you?
Yeah.
Your expectations are on a different level to his expectations.
Yeah.
So he was providing at a certain level that he expected, or he'd said that was an acceptable level. And then when he wasn't providing at that level, again, he was then having that internal issue with himself that he was maybe letting you down, or he was failing, or that he wasn't good enough or worthy, or whatever what was going on for him. So therefore, even that small dip in what he was giving you or was providing for your family then became a very big negative for him. So he wasn't then able to sit in a comfortable space because he felt like he was maybe letting himself down. And again, that would do all those internal expectations that we carry, again, that we pick up in childhood generally, that we carry throughout our lives, and then we limit ourselves by those expectations. And therefore he couldn't understand why you were happy in your place that you were in, because you had a completely different expectation of what he should be doing than he did. So yeah, it's very complicated. People are very complicated, aren't they? And as Carol Ann was saying, like, we all carry our own ideas of things, and it's an interesting thing that Carol Ann said about conflict as well, because if I say conflict to some people, that sounds like war. If I say conflict to some other person, that just means they're in a disagreement with somebody. So it's always good, as well as with my my NLP training, it's always good to check in with the words, because what I say as a word, you might interpret completely differently on a different level altogether. So it's really interesting when we're having conversations with people, also the words that we might be using. And also what Carol Ann said about finding your center when you're in a conversation with somebody. So I think not only have you been able to work on how your brain is wired and how that works, but I think you probably are a bit more centered as a person as well. So therefore, you're not going into your child space. You're staying in an adult space when you're having these conversations. And therefore, it's much easier for you to articulate what you're trying to put across. Because once you go into an emotional state, if that takes you back into something which then triggers hormones in your body or triggers difficult emotions for you, you can find it really difficult then to focus on what you're trying to say. And if we do go back into childhood spaces, then as a child, it was much more difficult to articulate yourself anyway. So you would then struggle to articulate what you want to say as an adult. So it's really important that, having that healthy relationship with yourself, understanding you've got a voice, understanding the space that you're in, will stop you going into those child spaces. You can stay as an adult, and then you can have those adult type of conversations. There is one little tip that I like to use when I'm working with people, and it's the 10% rule. No matter what somebody says that you disagree with, you could probably find 10% that you do agree with. And that's always a good starting point when you're having a conversation with somebody. Don't focus on the 90% that you don't agree with, because again, as Carol Ann was saying earlier on, you end up in that cycle of kind of blame, and you say you make me feel, or I don't agree with that, and you're going to put them into a defensive space, or you're going to shut them down completely, and nothing gets resolved. But if you can focus on the 10%, just find that 10% that you do agree with, and then add to that. So I agree with this part of what you're saying. How about if blah, 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 and you add your little extra bit to it as well. And then hopefully then that can layer the agreement as we move on, so that at least we can come to something that is mutually beneficial for both people. And that's just a little tip that I like to use with my clients if they find that they're really struggling with a specific relationship and just can't find anything of even ground with somebody, is just to try and think of, okay, let me just find one thing, or this 10% that they're actually saying that I agree with, and then I can add to that, and then hopefully we can have some kind of structured discussion about where we need to go with it.
That's a really important point, you've made there, John, because it is actually seeing what you can agree with that person and then building on it and actually acknowledging it, that they have said something that you can agree with, because then you've made that connection with them and they'll still listen to you, and then you can sort of lead them and add something else to it. And what you were saying about with the childhood things as well, what I can now do is recognize when that inner child comes out to play and wants to take over, which is a different place to where I used to be, because that inner child take over and totally take over, and I wasn't aware of it. Now I can actually stop and say, hang on a second, there's an inner child here who's actually showing up and who's ruling the show here, and actually speak from that, so I can actually then talk with somebody from a different point and say, let me just deal with this for a minute, or I can park my inner child for a moment. And then, as you say, it is about being able to come from that adult point of view. So thank you for that acknowledgement. Yes, I've grown so much through everything that I've trained in and worked on with myself. It's just I'm not the same person at all. And I remember quite a few years ago, my daughter saying to me, sorry?
I'll go and carry on.
I didn't quite get what you...
No, I was just going to point out the success you can from that. You can have the more success in your life if you're able to master that space. And this, not only with your relationships, but everything else that you do. If you can keep yourself in, like you said, and do that work on yourself to get yourself into that healthy relationship with you and that healthy space around yourself, then the success that you'll be able to gain from everywhere will be, exceptionally higher than what you would have done before.
I think I also agree with you, John. And sorry, you were talking, Carol Ann?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, I was saying I agree with you and John when you're saying sometimes we have to understand that whatever you have in mind, somebody may not agree with what you're saying. And I was listening to one of the past, I think 11 years ago, I was listening to watching TV, I happened to put him on, so he was saying in life you have to understand that people are crazy, and he was saying even himself that he's crazy. He was saying people can never agree with anybody, so he was saying you need to know who you are as a person. Don't expect everyone to agree with what you are saying, to agree with what you are doing, because whatever the choices, like Johnny, you were talking about choices, so he was saying the choices that you make in life, they are for you. So don't expect somebody who hasn't got a clue about the choices. You, like myself, I actually put that recording every time I keep playing this recording, and I came to an understanding that sometimes, like we make decisions in life. You actually sit down, I sit down, make decisions and relate to this choice that I'm making, and sometimes I'm scared, and then I work on my fears. By the time I go and tell somebody with the choice that I've made, and that person, when they react the same way that I have reacted before I even made that decision, before I accepted the choice that I am making, and now I'm telling them my choice, and they are responding. So I'm gonna expect them to actually respond in a proper way how I'm expecting. So I forget that actually I didn't respond to my choices straight away, so I had to deal with these choices.
The problem with expectations.
Yes, so the expectations. So I'm like, so now if somebody agrees with me, I just say, you know what? I ask why, and then I just say I have to understand that. Okay, whatever the choice that I'm making, this person, they can never understand, because this is the choice. It is my want. It's the things that I want, not theirs. So I have to come to an understanding, because it's like, John, when you post on Facebook, what I've realized through psychology, it's like you go on Facebook, you post something, a comment, or you post your picture, basically a nice picture with a nice message. You don't know what Nomsa is feeling. I look at you. You are successful. You are basically posting it. Your life looks amazing. My life looks awful. So I'm going to react to your post because of what I'm feeling, and you haven't got a clue what Nomsa is going through, and I'm affecting your glory now, and I'm pressing it, and I'm putting bad comment to your post. But if you don't know, you are not into personal development, you're going to react to my problems that have nothing to do with you, not knowing. But because you are into personal development, you're gonna look at the message and like, oh, what's wrong with Nomsa?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and just ignore me.
You're able to step out of your space and into someone else's space at that.
Yeah.
You go, clearly, if they've got an issue with this, there's something going on for them that means they feel like they need to express their negative emotions in my direction.
Yeah.
And again, if you can help, so what I like to think of it is, at those points, it's about responding rather than reacting. Because if you can respond, I like to link it to responsibility.
Yeah.
If I respond, I'm taking responsibility for what I'm going to say. If I react, what I'm doing is I'm reenacting my past or my feelings, and I'm just coming from the spare of the moment type of space. So yeah, it's able to, like you said, I have no idea what kind of mood you're in. You might take offense to what I've said, or it's pushed a button for you, and you might think it's all very unfair, or how can you have this and I haven't got that, and you look like you're having fun and I'm miserable, and if it touches enough of a button for you and you feel like you need to react to that, like you said, most people won't be able to say, oh, what's up with Nomsa? They'll say, oh, don't you talk to me like that, or don't you do this on my Facebook, or remove that comment, that's rude, or whatever. And rather than being able to go, actually, you know what, I don't really, maybe again, and it's okay what Carol Ann was saying earlier on about having a voice. It's okay for me to say, look, Nomsa, I completely understand if you're having a bad day, but it doesn't warrant you then now having your opinion on my stuff in maybe a rude way. I mean, if you just said something which wasn't too rude or anything, then obviously there's no problem. But if you were to put something on there that would then be inappropriate, again, it's okay for me then to say, look, I appreciate that you're having a bad day, but actually the way that you're talking to me right now is not appropriate. Or even better, if you're able to put it back to the other person and say, I understand that you're having a bad day. Do you think the way that you're talking to me is inappropriate? Or it is appropriate? And then that gets them to think about, actually, what are they doing? And a lot of the time we don't do that. As Carol Ann said earlier on, we usually become quite accusatory. You make me feel like this, you're doing that, rather than actually saying, I'm not very happy with what you're doing. Are you happy with what you're doing? Because then again, that shows a deeper connection, a deeper level of understanding for one another, and saying, look, I'm interested in how you're feeling. I don't really like what you're doing, but do you feel like that's an okay space for you to be in? And generally when you do that with people, they're either going to go, yes, I do, and they'll swear at you and walk away, or they'll say, do you know what, you're right, actually, that I don't, I am having a bad day, thanks for noticing. And you can then have that kind of, again, coming back into that adult space and have an adult conversation about it.
Kamal's mom says respect is the best in every relationship.
Yeah, I think respect is massively important.
Yeah, it is.
In so many different ways, like just not respecting the person, but respecting their space, respecting their emotions, respecting their decisions, just having that overall kind of thoughtfulness towards somebody else. But again, also being able to say it's okay if you don't like it.
Do you have a comment, Caroline?
Yeah, respect is important, but also so is trust and empathy. And I think trust was something that I realized that I didn't actually have. I wasn't really fully aware of it because I think I was so in the distrusting mode at the time that I wasn't realizing how distrusting I was. And it's not since I sort of come out of that I've realized that there was even though I said I trusted my ex-husband, at another level I didn't. I wasn't really believing, so I wasn't actually being authentic, but I wasn't aware of myself doing that. You know, it's like, I think there's sort of games that we play really at a really unconscious level, or that we seem to think, oh, it's okay to be like that. But trust is really important, because if you can really trust the other person and show that you trust them, that really builds a deep connection. And also it impacts the way you speak as well to that person, or how you question them or talk with them, you know, or accept or not what they're saying. But the other thing about empathy, it sort of ties in with what John, you were saying about listening from the other person's point of view, being able to be with them, acknowledge what they're saying. Because if you can understand their viewpoint and understand how they, and it's also respecting how they might say something, but their way of dealing with things, but it's also understanding somebody's language. And I think that's one of the hardest things I've always found. But again, since I've done all this training and really started diving into language and listening for words and recognizing words that people use, you then have a different understanding of that person, because it depends whether they're visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, and you might be someone who's visual. So you're always saying, well, do you see this? Or, what do you see? And the other person could be kinesthetic and going, well, I can't feel that. You've completely missed each other, And I discovered this when I was helping people to set some goals. And we were going round and round in circles. We couldn't seem to set this goal. And all of a sudden I heard what she was saying. And I was using the different modality, different word to her. As soon as I used her word, we were able to set the goal and move on. Yeah. It made a huge difference. Yeah. So now I'm much more aware of language that people use. Yeah. And I'm becoming more comfortable at using it rather than stuck in my own, saying
your own world.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's recognizing, accepting it, and being willing to use their language. That again shows respect, but it also shows that there's empathy, there's an understanding, and it does connect. Because if you're expecting them to understand you, you have to understand them, and so language is really key to communication and listening to words. So listening is another key tool that again I've realized and opened up my listening, because we can all hear, but listening is the active part of hearing. Hearing is just passive. You hear whatever, but listening, there's an action to that. It's taking in what that person is saying. It's going, oh, what are they saying? What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel from what they're saying? And really listening. So it's completely different. And a lot of people don't understand the difference. Mm. They say, I'm listening, and I'm going, no, you're not. You're already formulating the words in your head, what you want to say. And I can feel that in somebody. Yeah. I can really feel that. And it stops me talking, because I can feel they're not really listening. They're not with me.
It's interesting.
And it's taken me a long time to realize that.
The words there is because I would say something slightly different because of the way I use the words. So I would say, I can listen to what you're saying, but I'm not really hearing you, where you kind of said it the other way around.
You sound like Martin.
Yeah, I would say the other thing. So I would say, look, I can see that you're listening, but you're not really hearing me. So it's interesting that you would use hearing in a different sense. And again, that shows to show how complicated language is, but also communication is. really knowing what the other person is trying to say, so that you can kind of really connect with that person on their level.
And also men communicate differently than women. Men are straight to the point. When you have something, you want to send a message, your needs, your desires, you want them to know. You don't have to go around the bush and start playing games and start. You have to go straight to the point. These are my needs. These are my desires. So before, I couldn't understand that. I used to actually, I would just get frustrated. I would be like expecting that the other person to be a psychic. But now I know that men, basically, when you want to communicate with men, you have to tell them how you want them to treat you. You have to explain your needs. You have to explain your desires. Even if you want them to take the trash out, you don't have to go around and say, you've never took the trash out. Just say, baby, could you please take the trash out on your way? If you want to avoid the screaming, the noises when it comes to men, just go straight to the point. Just say, baby, on your way out, as you are opening the door, just take the trash out. They'll feel like they're big men. They're like, oh, okay, no arguing. But some women, they don't know that. They'll be like, I'm always do this. I always do this. Don't go there. If you know that you're always the one who is doing things, just say, baby, you know what? I love you and I appreciate you. You're going out, take the trash out. He'll be like, okay, no argument. That way, and I'll be like, okay. Or if you've never spent time, or like maybe sometimes you've never been out for a long time, just go out on Google, just check. You can Google any restaurant. You just say, oh, I found this Chinese restaurant. It looks nice. Are you free on this? Don't say we've never been out. They don't like stories. Men don't like long stories, and it's like children's stories. They get frustrated. Go straight to the point. This is my needs. Take me out. And that's it. Is it, John, is it true?
Yeah, or just book the table and say we're going to a Chinese.
Yeah. Many, they're actually simple. I used to make things very, very complicated with my life, in my relationships. But now I realize actually they are not complicated. They are very easy. It's just how us women, how we communicate, how we send messages across. It's like, John, when the other day, I think we changed the topic. And when we changed the topic last minute, you saw it last minute. And then the other day I was like, oh, John is a relationship coach. Why can't we just have once a week when he comes on and we talk about relationships? So I was like, can you actually please choose a relationship topic next time when you're on? I just got a message. He was like, no, I'm sorry, here's the topic. It's not simple, even with Kamau, when I send him a message, because I've got 2 men in my talk show, I say, please, can I have the topic? He's like, okay, sure. And then I get a topic with women. I have to explain myself what kind of a topic I need, how it should be written. It's a long story. But when men, life is so simple. Sorry, women.
And that's very important, isn't it? I think, because, you know, again, when it comes to the success of your relationships, it's about understanding. But if you want to tell me a story to explain yourself, it's, I know you're going to tell me a story, and I just need to sit back and listen to your story. I don't need to get you to hurry up and say, come on, get to the point, because then you're going to feel unheard or not listened to, because I'm taking you out of what you need to do in order to express yourself. Whereas, like you said, on the other hand, if I just want to tell you something, like I think there's a comedy sketch, and he said he comes home from the pub, and she said, "Oh, do you have a nice time down the pub?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, did you go out with him?" He said, "Oh, so and so." And he went, "Oh, and how's his wife?" He said, "I don't know." "Well, you didn't ask how his wife was." "No." "Well, I just said, do you want a pint?" And we sat down and had a chat. And she said, "Well, you're not interested in how the wife is?" And he says, "No." He says, "What I heard the wife was this." And she starts to talking about the wife, and he's like, "But I don't care about that type of stuff, you know?" So just again, it's understanding what's important to the other person and how they communicate, how they want to tell their story. But also again accepting that the other person might be like straight to the point. And if you want, like you said, if you want them to be on the same page as you, it's about saying, how does this person need to hear this? How do I need to give an explanation? And vice versa. Do I not need to? Do I just have to say, this is what I want you to do, can you please do it? Or do I need to be more subtle and say, okay, so then I went to this and this happened, and when I went around there, does that make sense to you? And can you do anything about that? So it's really, you know, again, it's being, I think as Carol Ann, it's a bit like empathy, but it's a little bit just about saying, this is how this person works. Let me just put myself in their shoes for 2 minutes, just so that I can communicate this in a way that will be heard and they'll understand it better than the way I'd like to say it. Because you'll just be spending all of your time thinking about what someone else is doing. And you don't want to do that either.
Kamal's mom, she's saying, listen, this is what her parents used to say when she was a kid. Her parents used to say, you need to listen is very, very important. And she's saying the problem with women is that we think a lot of things at the same time, where men think of one thing at a time. That is so true, actually.
I slightly disagree with that. I think there's probably a lot more stuff going on, and also, no, I'm not going to bring that up today because that's probably going to cause a long discussion we haven't got time for, but yeah, I think there is about kind of getting clarity on your thoughts, so that you know exactly what you want to say and how you want to say it. I think again it's about, Carol Ann said earlier, about finding your voice and being clear in yourself. This is the result I'd like to get from this communication. Therefore, I need to put this away and across where what I want is made very clear, so the person understands where I'm coming from. So yeah, there may be something along the lines of that. I'm trying to think of too many things at once, but I'm actually guilty of that as well. So I don't think that's just necessarily a female thing.
I think Kamal's mom, what she's saying, you know, like when someone is trying to tell you a straightforward story, us women, we go round and round and round, and you're like, why don't you just tell me exactly what is going on? So I think that's what she means by that. Women, we don't. I used to be that kind of a woman that if I wanted to send a message across, like Carol Ann says, you need to have a voice. So instead of me sending a voice, I'll get frustrated and like, why don't you get me? Why don't you? But the person can't get me because I'm not actually voicing my want. So that's what with the problem. And since I've sorted that, I've realized now if I want something, if I want to go shopping, or if I want my partner to give me money to go shopping, I just say, hey babe, my daughter was saying, why is Daddy's card that is being used all the time? I was like, Kayla, shush. So yeah. Yeah, so if I want something, or I feel like I've seen something nice, if I can't afford it, if he can afford it, why not ask? You never know until you ask. And also expectations, you have to be aware of the expectations. If the answer is no, be prepared for rejection. It's okay, next time, I'll try next time.
That's a good point. I always like to say, if you never ask, the answer's always no.
Yep, you're never gonna know.
Absolutely, yeah. But I like you were saying about going, being straight to the point. It took me a long time to realize that actually I used to go around the houses, I would hedge around. But a few years ago, I realized that actually it was learned behavior from my mum.
Yeah. Because
she always went around the houses. And as soon as I realized that, it was like, oh, I don't need to do that then. So all of a sudden it's like I realized I could be more direct, and more to the point, because I always struggled at being to the point.
Yeah,
so there's recognizing what is learned behavior.
Yeah, it smacks of a bit of unsurety and lack of confidence, doesn't it? When you feel like you maybe need to over-explain something, when all you're doing is really asking for something or expressing your point of view. If you feel like you really can't you really need to go around the story to get to your point. It does strike us again as a little bit, I'm not quite confident enough in myself to put my needs out there.
Yes.
And my wants out there.
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize that.
I think we've run out of time, guys. John, is there any words of encouragement you would like to leave with our audience, please?
Yeah, just coming back to kind of the topic of today's show about success in relationships and how it can stop you being successful in life. If hopefully you've taken something away from today, but to recognize that if your relationships are in a difficult place, they will bleed out into all areas of your life. So if you're trying to make a successful business, I'm not saying you can't do that, but if you have a successful relationship running alongside of that, it'll make your life so much easier. So to really focus on the relationships that you've got, making them as healthy as they can possibly be, using some of maybe the kind of techniques and ideas that we've talked about today would be really useful. And if you really do struggle with finding those types of successful relationships, then they do have a massive impact. Obviously, as Nomsa said, get yourself a coach, someone who really understands the kind of complexities of human behavior. They'll help you to understand yourself. They'll help you to understand someone else. So you can put different things into practice, which can help you to live the quality and successful relationships you're looking for.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Johnny. Over to you, Carol Ann. Any words of encouragement?
Yeah, just basically you have a choice, and it's recognizing you have a choice. You do not need to put up with behavior or relationships that are not working for you, that make you feel uncomfortable. And it's recognizing when it makes you feel uncomfortable. Find your voice, because you have every right to speak up, and you have a choice. And at the end of the day, it's also about love, because there's trust, respect, and love is what there is in a healthy relationship. But first of all, you need to love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, you're not giving permission for other people to love you either. So love yourself and know you have a choice in how a relationship is going to be. And find your voice. And then just enjoy, have fun, laugh, have fun. That's what it's all about. It's having fun.
Yeah, relationships can be easy.
Yep. It can be easy if you understand what a relationship is about. First, you have to enter your spirit of love. Then when you enter your world, you understand who you are. You can let someone in, and then you can get to know their spirit inside and love them. Even when you fight, that means you can fight with grace and have mercy. Because some people, when they start fighting, they start telling you what happened a year ago. So if you understand what love is about, you have mercy to your lover, and then you fight based on that subject. Focus on what you are fighting for, and also sending messages across. Let people know what you want in a relationship. Let your partner or your spouse or your wife, let them know you want. It is your right, your birthright, for you to tell somebody how you want to be treated, even in business. If I meet Johnny for the first time, it is his birthright to actually tell me his life, about his life, his values, business values. If, let's say, I want to connect with John, I have to understand his values in business. He's a relationship coach. What does he value the most? That means a relationship to him, to have somebody who is authentic, someone who is true to him. That's going to be one of his number one priority to check me out. You say, is she authentic or not? So you just have to figure people out before you can expect them to actually love you. And sometimes we're in a relationship with other people, we are not meant to be there. So that's what love is about. Not everybody that cross path with you, they're meant to be your lover. I've realized in my love life, that there are some people who entered my life. They were lovely, they were really, really helpful, but I chose to enter intimacy relationship, but actually God never sent them for that. He sent them for them to help me with that moment, purpose, or help me say, no, sir, this is where you're meant to go. But then I was like, wow, he's attractive, he's handsome, I could kiss him, I'd find myself imagining, but now I'm like, hey, whoa, I stay away. So thank you so much, guys. For those who are watching, we are here Monday to Friday. We have amazing speakers every day, so please connect with us and live with grace, everyone. Oh, we finish. Okay, I think I'm gonna end it here. We are off, guys.